Then the geology changes suddenly to shale, the same layer that's been buried down to cooking depths under the North Sea to sweat out all our North Sea gas and oil.
St Albans Head, and we're into the Isle of Purbeck, famous for its marble.
Purbeck has enjoyed a long continuity of quarrying, certainly since the 12th century, and we find by the reign of Henry III it was being used for the most prestigious monuments, such as his shrine for Edward the Confessor in Westminster Abbey. And one sees it used in the building of the great medieval cathedrals at Ely and Salisbury and Exeter and a number of others.
The chalk ridge that's been running from east to west stands right on end here at Old Harry Rocks, but falls flat under Poole, so the coast's no longer protected from erosion.
Up to now, much of the coast's been owned by the National Trust, and nobody's allowed to build on it. By contrast, the land from Poole Harbour eastwards to Christchurch is just like the Costa Brava.
I wish we had the Costa Brava weather, but that old image of the Bournemouth landlady, busty, curlers in her hair, standing on the doorstep with a long list of don'ts, it's all changed. We wouldn't last 5 minutes in our business if we were like that now.
The Solent River flowed along here 10,000 years ago. Then, from the last ice age, the ice melted, and it raised the seas, and the sea came in, and all the river valleys down here were drowned. And this little southern bit of land got cut off. And that's how the Isle of Wight was made.
Southampton Water, with Culshaw Castle on its spit. Flying towards Lee, Gosport. Then it'll be Portsmouth.
In 1967, I set off to sail single-handed around the world. And it was appropriate to do it from Portsmouth because the Royal Navy was founded here. It's the home of Admiral Nelson's Victory. But there's not enough naval work to keep the population going anymore, I'm afraid. Now we've got IBM, Zurich Insurance, and a whole lot of industry like Plessey and Marconi.
Chichester Harbour, and across to Sussex. Wing around Selsey Bill, Patrick Moore Territory, and Pagham Harbour Nature Reserve.
Bognor Regis, Bugger Bognor, as George V said.
Of course, the name's always been against us. Conjures up an old Victorian atmosphere, but we've got the Clowns Convention, the Birdman Contest, where you fly off the end of the pier with homemade wings.
There's an arts and recreation centre, children's zoo, Butlins. What else do you want?
In the olden days, nobody in his right mind went anywhere near the coast if he could help it. It was cold and wet and dangerous. It wasn't until the Prince Regent made it fashionable and built his palace at Brighthelmston, as Brighton was known then, that there was anyone here but fishermen and smugglers. Now, as well as everything else, Brighton has the largest marina in Europe.
Now we're beginning to see the edge of the South Downs. Chalk. A pure white graveyard for billions and billions of tiny organisms that once swarmed in tropical seas. One by one, the microscopic creatures came to the end of their lives, and their chalky shells sank to the bottom. How many died to form these towering cliffs? The number must have been absolutely astronomical.
The beautiful Seven Sisters.
Formed at a time when we were in deepest cold. In summer, the meltwater couldn't sink through the frozen chalk, so it ran off and carved these shallow valleys. At Beachy Head, the chalk that started on the deep sea floor 600 feet down is now nearly 600 feet high. Behind the protection of these ramparts, Eastbourne has to fight to keep its beaches.
And its customers. Why did they start coming in the first place? It couldn't always have been royal patronage. The origin of the British seaside holiday was medical. The rich visited spas for their health. But in 1752, Dr. Richard Russell's A Dissertation on the Use of Seawater started a new trend. Patients had to drink 25 gallons of the nearest ocean in 1-pint doses. The good doctor recommended bathing only after a purgative and in winter when the pores of the skin were tightly closed.
The landslip at Fairlight, where the famous lover's seat keeps falling over the edge.
By 1850, the seaside had forgotten the spa and had a flavour of its own with piers, promenades, and even music halls. The new railways brought the excursionists to the resorts, and holidays with pay finally opened up the beaches to the less than wealthy. Yes, even here, as we round Dungeness with its nuclear power station, we have a sprinkling of seaside attractions.
The massive shingle deposit of Dungeness was built out by opposing storm waves coming up channel and from the North Sea, and quite recently too. In the early Bronze Age, the coast lay up against that ridge on the skyline.
The ridge that once formed the coast cuts straight across the land, comes out at Folkestone, and eventually forms the most famous cliffs in Britain.
There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover tomorrow. Just you wait and see. There